On March 31st, 1994, the New York Rangers face off versus the Vancouver Canucks. The Rangers are trying to break the longest Stanley Cup drought in the NHL, while the Canucks are trying to win their very first Stanley Cup. Here's how it all happened today on Daily Sports History. Welcome to Daily Sports History. I'm Ethan Reese, your guide to a rapid deep dive into sports history. And today's trivia question to watch out for is, what is the most watched hockey game in Canada history? Now, before we get to the finals, we have to figure out how each of these teams made it to this point. And we'll start with the Vancouver Canucks, as they started their 24th season that year in the Pacific League and finished with a record of 41 wins and 40 losses. They were coached by Pat Quinn and led by Pavel Bure in goals and points, and Jeff Brown in assists. And Kurt McLean was leading the way in the net as their goalie with 23 wins. And he would go on to have 15 wins in the postseason. In the playoffs, they ended up with the 7th seed, but that didn't stop them from taking down number 1 in their division, the Calgary Flames, in the first round. And in the second round, beating them in a 7-game series. In the second round, they took on the Dallas Stars and took them down in 5 games, leading them to the Western Conference Finals versus the Toronto Maple Leafs, beating them in 5 games, setting up a chance for them to win their very first Stanley Cup. And on the other side, who they would face was the New York Rangers. Now, the Rangers came in to the playoffs with the best record in the league, and one of the main reasons for that was their captain, Mark Messier. And though he wasn't their leader in goals or points or assists, he still led the team in grit. And he had been a part of the New York Rangers since 1991, when they traded for him from the Edmonton Oilers, where he had previously won a Stanley Cup. In his introductory conference with the team, he guaranteed he would bring a Stanley Cup to this team, who at the time had the longest drought since their last time of winning a Stanley Cup, which was 1940. And entering the 1993 season, it had been 54 years since they had won. But it wasn't an easy road. They faced challenges while in the playoffs, despite having the best record. They swept the first series versus the New York Islanders and faced Washington and had no problems defeating them in 5 games. But then they came across the New Jersey Devils, who were a predominant team at the time. And after 5 games, they were down 3-2, as the Devils goaltender Martin Brodeur, a Hall of Famer, one of the best goaltenders ever, was not allowing them to score. But that's when Mark Messier said at that point that they were going to win Game 6 and come back to the Garden and win Game 7. We have the talent and experience to turn the tide, and that's exactly what we're going to do in Game 6. And that is exactly what they did. This guarantee is huge for the New York Rangers. He guaranteed they would win a Stanley Cup, and then he guaranteed they would win this finals to get to the Stanley Cup. And everyone loved Mark Messier for this, and he delivered as they won those final 2 games and made it to the Stanley Cup Finals. But that doesn't mean it would be easy, as Vancouver wanted to get their first Stanley Cup as well. And coming into Game 1, which started on May 31st, 1994, played at Madison Square Garden in New York, the Rangers came out early with a lead of 2-1, but late in the third period, the Canucks came and tied the game 2-2 with 1 minute left to play in regulation, and they went into overtime, which was the 3rd straight game for the Rangers to be in overtime, and they surrendered a last-minute goal, giving the Vancouver Canucks the win 3-2 in the very first game. Game 2 would come back to New York, and they would not relinquish. They came out fighting in that game, winning handily 3-1. In Game 3, we go to Vancouver, and the Canucks came storming back in front of the home fans, making the first goal. But that would be the last time they would score. And the New York Rangers took off, scoring the next 5 goals, winning the game 5-1. With a 2-1 series lead, then in Game 4, the Vancouver Canucks wanted to come out, and they jumped early, scoring the first 2 goals of the game. But those would again be the last goals they would score, as New York went and scored 4 straight goals, winning the game 4-2. This put Vancouver backs against the walls, down 3-1. New York Ranger fans were so excited it seemed like Mark Messier was living up to his promise. They head back to New York. This was the moment they could win their title in front of their home fans. And New York had already set a date for a victory parade. However, the celebration was too early, as the Canucks came out early again, scoring 3-0. And despite the previous games, they would not relinquish this lead, and they continued to score. Even though the Rangers tied the game 3-3, that would be the last time the Rangers would score, and the Canucks would take the lead and not relinquish it, winning the game 6-3. And in Game 6, we head back to Vancouver, where the Canucks fire 14 shots in the first period, taking the lead 1-0, again jumping out to a quick start, and they would not relinquish this lead and finishing the game 4-1, tying the series, having the New York Rangers with their backs against the walls now, as they had lost 2 straight games when they could have closed out and already won the series. Game 7 was the big match. It was back in New York at Madison Square Garden. Both teams, this was the final game. They couldn't let anything go. Fans came out in droves, and the atmosphere was ecstatic. Everyone was hoping in New York to finally break this drought. And the Rangers actually did something they hadn't done in this series. They jumped out to the lead early, scoring 2 goals within 15 minutes. However, the Canucks came back and scored a goal shortly after, making it 2-1. But Mark Messier came back during a power play, making another goal, tying the game at 2-2. Then with 5 minutes left, Nathan Lafayette hits a wobbly puck that passes by the Vancouver goalie just behind the post, giving him the lead, which they would hold on for the rest of the game, winning the series on a victory 3-2, breaking their 54-year Stanley Cup drought. Mark Messier had made good on his promise of actually winning this game for the first time. And we see one of the most iconic images with Mark Messier jumping up and down with Tipper tape falling, excitement throughout the stadium. And he would go on to earn the nickname Mr. June. Now, what made this even more bigger than anything else, this series made hockey a national moment. Baseball was not being played at this moment as they were having a strike, and all eyes were on this game, and it showed in the ratings. This was the highest rated game in the United States history, drawing a 5.2 rating and getting a 16.2 rating in the New York area. Now, I'm not going to go into ratings right now because it is a huge confusing thing, but that's roughly 7 million watchers. In Canada, Game 7 was the most watched Canada broadcast with over 10 million views until 2002 with the gold medal game versus Canada and the United States in the 2002 Olympics. So not only was it getting huge views in Canada, it got huge views in America, and it gave hockey a moment in the 1990s. And it goes to show you that confidence can go a long way in what we do. Mark Messier didn't know the future. He didn't know they would win those games in that playoffs. He didn't know when he got traded to New York that they would actually win a Stanley Cup. He just believed in himself. Sometimes that's all we need to do, is believe in ourselves to have success. And I want to thank Greg and Lee Garfield. I want to thank Lee Garfield and Greg from Twitter for suggesting this topic. And if you have a great topic that you want us to do on our show, all you got to do is leave us a review wherever you're listening, or send us an email at dailysportshistory@gmail.com. And we'd love to hear from you and get that moment in history done for you. And come back Monday for more Daily Sports History. And the answer to today's trivia question: what is the most watched hockey game in Canada history? And the answer was the 2002 Olympic gold medal match between Canada and the United States.